Welcome back, everybody. So, Diablo 4 came out in its early access that a lot of people paid some extra money for. Matt, what's up?
Me.
How's it going? We both played a whole bunch of it to come to you guys today with this video.
Blizzard have, and I'm going to be a little bit hyperbolic here because I do have some issues with the game. I do have a lot of things to talk about that may not be like perfect. However, Blizzard have, as far as my experience has gone, they have managed to merge the big, sweaty ARPG genre with something a little bit more befitting what people expect of a mass market AAA like RPG open world kind of game, especially when it comes into the campaign, the story quality, and their end game, like actual design of it, the balance of it, the way you literally feel when you're playing. And I played this as someone who's playing like a Shadow Step Flurry build as a rogue and has in the beta and did again because it was really good. They've just made crack. They've redesigned video game crack like they did back in the day with Diablo 2. For a lot of people, like they did with World of Warcraft in its earliest inception, where they're like, it's very hard to put this game down. It is. I'm literally worried about my playtime. That's what I'm feeling after playing this.
So it's interesting. I'm not anticipating that problem because for me, I think it's definitely less gripping for me than it is for you. But this is the bit that surprised me. It was the end game that actually managed to get you a bit. I think for me, my initial first impression was the narrative. It certainly starts off on a strong foot, then it kind of plods. It does a lot of plodding, and it's enjoyable plodding, and because the combat and all that stuff is fun, it's kind of okay to plod along. Certainly as a narrative experience from my perspective, all the way up to like, getting into Act 4, not really super strong. I have a feeling that the larger moments haven't, obviously haven't really happened yet. It definitely, to me, is still an ARPG narrative. It is unlike the past Diablo games. Mostly 3, like it is actually worth speaking of. Diablo 3 tried to be, more of a big narrative, but of course they just end up mogging Deckard Cain, wasting that character, having all the Adria bullshit, and, really D3 was a real just pussyified version of the game, right? It was just so weak and limp, and I suppose at least so far the thing that I'm liking versus where in World of Warcraft, the World of Warcraft team have completely forgotten the Warcraft, and it's just a lot of characters that mope and talk about their emotions and cry, which, is fine. It's just the sort of thing where maybe if you build up to that over, say, 8 episodes of a TV show and, the character finally breaks, and then the moment's really well earned, versus a lot of these modern TV shows where people just fucking cry and mope and every single episode, and you're like, oh my god, these writers think they're emotionally intelligent. Instead, they are just writing teenagers. So, it is nice to have a Blizzard game where it doesn't feel like everyone's a goddamn teenager, or you've got these, bizarre characters who talk. I know, like, Lorath talks slowly and dramatically, but Lorath actually works. I suppose that's another thing. Compared to the VO we've been getting over in Warcraft land, the voice acting, like voice performances, presentation so far is the thing that's absolutely impeccable.
So that's why I think Diablo 4 is essentially 2 video games merged into one. And you can think about how they originally wanted to do an over-the-shoulder version of this, and you can see exactly where that came from. And you can see we're moving away from the third person kind of over the shoulder shot. Actually maybe hurt their ambitions in some ways, but however, in the grand scheme of things, in making the game that people recognize as Diablo, this was the right choice. But to me, it's 2 games because all of the character work is really very modern AAA. You can tell, and I don't know who the writers are on it and if they've got any historical work elsewhere, but whoever they are well primed for making that kind of, this is emotionally intelligent, it's dark, it's set in a dark and gritty world. It's got everything it needs. The voice acting, the presentation, everything about it, while bounded by being this isometric view, which does definitely take the weight out of it compared to what you get in a God of War, where you're looking at people all the time, you're seeing this different perspective.
Not as much at the very start. And I think the way that they, whenever you're basically drugged and put onto a cart, the way that they play with the isometric camera there is like a really strong moment. I was expecting them to do that more from a cinematography perspective. I kind of found that they didn't really as much, though.
They put all of the effort into the start and the end. It gets a little bit plotty in the middle throughout, but there are definitely still strong enough moments in it that you go, I'm actually going to remember this. That left, not like this left a deep emotional scar, but that was surprising. That was a moment where they went for, we're going to hit you with something, and we've set it up, we've earned it, and it's going to make you think about the characters and what they do and how they go. There's enough of those throughout that work for character moments that I feel like this is it's not going to stand there with a God of War, but it's very close to that level of when people expect a narrative from a video game, they're going to get it. I think people will come out of Diablo 4, the broad audience, we've got the Halcyon, the BTS person in our marketing. We want everyone on the planet to look at this game and go, oh, Blizzard want the every single eyeball on the planet idea. And that kind of fights with Diablo as an RPG, but the campaign honestly is really very, very, very good in that sense.
Where I think the vast majority would have been perhaps a little bit disappointed by Diablo 3, I think they will be generally fairly happy with 4. Also, you think about a lot of these open world games like, the Assassin's Creed Valhalla, whatever, and a lot of us may turn our nose up like, oh, it's a big map full of things. This time around, the big map full of things design actually works, even though it is, you could sort of say, utterly uninspired. It truly does nothing new or interesting with its world, other than have the world itself be just very richly realized, meshing then with the combat, which we'll get to in a bit, which is broadly quite excellent. So you don't really need the world to be going around reinventing the wheel, and the sort of usual affair doing your side quests and that kind of thing is fine. Strongholds, I think, are a little bit more of a standout, just because some of the strongholds, they feel like a little bit more tightly themed.
Yeah, they're very, very... It's like they don't reinvent the wheel because they don't need to, because what they've sat down and went, well, how do we make a game that is a 60-hour game without ever squeezing you into the, like, end game shoot that those Diablo games often feel like, where you go, I've completed the campaign, what now? And it's like, grind? That's what you do for the rest of this. It's like, oh, now you can finally play the game. That vibe is not forced there, because you can do the campaign, and I think I did maybe 15 to 20% of maybe about 15% of side content, and finish the campaign in around maybe 22 hours or something. That was over 2 days. That was over a Saturday and Sunday. I'm genuinely worried about how much this game is hard to put down. But then you look and go, okay, well, if you look at all the side content, the stuff that opens up at max level, the stuff that opens up across, without ever getting into goopy gamer brain stuff, you can get a full like 60 to 80 hour of just do loads of content, and it all feels reasonably fresh. Stuff like side dungeons are like, hey, it's the same dungeon, but it looks different. It's got like a bit of a different thing, but the way side quests bring you in there for a specific reason, it feels like they've intelligently used all that. So you end up coming out of this as a player who's maybe not into the Diablo 4 endgame, with a whole bunch of, maybe it's a little bit easy if you stick at World Tier 2 when you get up there, but it feels like, oh, I have side quests for days, and all the side quests are set, like you say, in that richly realized world where it's, a lot of them are kind of similar note, because it's like, okay, well, what happens in the world of Diablo? There are demons and people die. So you're like, you can expect the majority of it to be demons and people die. But there's enough of a small twist on that with how characters have, like, up in Skosglen, there's a pair of characters who are these like troublemakers, and the lead-in quest is the person in the tavern going, they've nicked my sign, and obviously the one thing is everything's voice acted and really well, so the people in Scotland have this like rich variety of Scottish and Irish accents, sometimes blended. That's so it feels really good, and I'm actually surprised at how accurate like the names and stuff are to that, so I was impressed with that. But you're going around, you do that side quest, and it doesn't unfold anything like you expect, and it kind of builds this small sense of this is like a tavern in the middle of nowhere, but you can sense there's like an actual decent community around it, and they do that really well. Every part of side quest, there's really like, you go into the druidic stuff in Scotland, and it's actually a pretty deep idea of, hey, here's the old ways, how does that like mesh with the cathedral, how does that mesh with the light, how does it mesh with, Inarius and the belief in him, how does all this stuff mesh together? There's loads of different small bits of, people feel guilt, people feel like worry, people feel fear, people have anger, all of the sins you might imagine represent in different ways throughout, and end up going, this is actually, it might not be to the same tier as like a Horizon Forbidden West or something in terms of how cinematic it all feels, but in terms of content it fairly matches.
And even if it's just for a little bit of tone, I have enjoyed actually just talking to NPCs.
Really good. Really good.
Like, not because they have anything particularly incredible to say, it's just, it's all very well done, and when you're going around like those little settlements, it just kind of fits and it works together, even though you don't have dialogue trees or nothing really advanced is being done. It's just that they are executing on the game to a level of polish and quality that actually does make the difference. It makes Diablo 3 feel like an indie mobile game. There's definitely a joke about Diablo Immortal in there, because Immortal is basically just a port to 3, now that, just that, of course, Deckard Cain is involved in Legendary Gems.
Oh, of course.
It is surprisingly good, more so than you would have expected from a modern Blizzard Entertainment, and I think it, in a way, would have to be, because you think about how it's monetized. So there's the early access thing. It's a full price game. You've got battle passes, which will be paid when they come in 6 to 8 weeks. Of course, there's cosmetics on the store. But the thing is, the sheer quantity of content that they have shipped. Like, the world is absolutely gigantic. I've got my horse now, and it still doesn't feel like, it's not that thing where you get a horse in an MMO or a flying mount or something and suddenly the world feels tiny. No, I feel like I need this bloody horse in order to be able to explore the place.
Yeah, it is a very, very big place. I spent maybe like, there's a 15-minute timer on the world boss, so I went and explored like 1/4 of the map, and it took me that like most of that 15 minutes to literally just ride around and open all the areas without doing any content in them, just to like find things. And that was in 1/5 of the game world. And I'm like, this is very big. Obviously, they're going to have to like reuse that a lot for the seasonal content, but I think it's just, you don't feel hard done by. You don't feel shortchanged because the campaign's good enough that, well, maybe if you bought like $100 and you had no interest in any endgame whatsoever, and it was like campaign finished, credits roll, I'm done, it might be a little bit rough, but it's still like 20 hours. It's still 20 hours, and it's still actually pretty good. It's like, I'm not going to say it's like a 9 out of 10 campaign, but it is like a solid 8. It's a solid 8 as a campaign, and it's also a very, very good game in every other way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because I haven't got to the end yet, I like kind of meandered a little bit. I have a feeling that I haven't seen what's likely the best content and the bits that I know some people have said like, oh, this is one of the best cinematics Blizzard have ever done. I have a feeling I haven't quite got there yet.
You know when you get there because it's 8 minutes long. It is a Blizzard quality. This is their full cinematic team, and they just do a segment of the game that's 8 minutes of that. And I think that's very cool, but I also have a slight issue with it, and this is where I come into why the campaign's like an 8 and not a 9. That's because it kind of drags in the middle pacing-wise a little bit. You don't feel that when you're playing because you're just zooming around killing stuff, and the crack cocaine video game actually continues that way. But it does kind of drag a little bit, and you go, oh, you maybe were more ambitious for this main campaign and had to like shuffle bits about.
Perhaps,
this
yeah.
bit doesn't have stuff. And then by the time you watch the entire campaign, the entire cinematic, you pick up your controller, put your hands back in your mouse and keyboard and go, what was I doing? What's going on? And it felt disjointed to me. I know that's going to be a real nitpick kind of thing because people go, that was great, I loved it, I'm happy to play more. But I was just like, oh, why'd you tell that whole story segment in big cinematic? This feels like we're just sent to watch a YouTube video instead of the game for a bit.
But there's ways where they can feel kind of limited by their tools, which is what I thought wouldn't be as much the case based on the start of the game and the way that it still manages to feel that level of cinematic even with the isometric camera because of how they use it. Yeah. To move on to the other, I think, final thing that we need to talk about the core game before you talk a bit about endgame. Basic controls combat. So I played a wizard in the open test, a sorcerer, yeah. Rogue this time. I've got a different build to you. I'm the Twisting Blade Shadow Imbuement build. So Twisting Blade, you stick the blade into boys, the blade... it will hit them once, and then it will basically return back to you. So if you then dash through or shadow step through a big crowd, it will do damage to all of them. I then have, it's a legendary that makes those twisting blades. When they return to me, they spin around for a bit.
Oh, the orbit, yeah.
So you are basically just this absolute whirlwind of death. Everything explodes. A boss is in front of you. You then use your little shadow double to... so you shadow double, shadow imbue, do all your twisting blades, enemies about to hit you, shadow step behind them, you just kind of keep all of that going. It is simple, it is fun and smashy. So very much, I suppose, what you'd be looking for from an ARPG. I have a feeling that if I was to go to like Path of Exile, I would probably find technically on paper more depth. I will say for whatever my purposes are of the game so far, and I haven't got into, say, the Paragon boards yet, but so far, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, what basic skill are you using?
Oh, the one that throws the 3 daggers.
Oh, so what you're saying is we basically have the same build, except I use Flurry and you use Twisting Blades. Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's a different bit of flavor to it, because I do the same as a rogue. I tried ranged and I didn't really like it very much. And this is where I think it's interesting, where I think if you play enough and find a class and a build that clicks, you'll have that, this is flowing non-stop, I'm in complete flow, I'm doing everything beautifully.
It's like me with the monk in D3, where it's like, yeah, the Demon Hunter was fine, but there was something about the spell effects and the way that monk felt that I really loved it.
Yeah, it's like I didn't like Diablo 3 playing as Demon Hunter, and then I came back with Reaper Souls and played Crusader, went, oh yeah, this is a lot more fun.
Crusader's great.
Yeah, so I think... it's obviously like your mileage may vary based on class and stuff, but obviously with that build of Shadow Clone, Shadow Imbuement, Shadow Step, Dash, Puncture and Flurry. Flurry, though, it's, I guess, the way to describe how the build feels, because obviously the controls, it's hard to explain controls other than saying they're really good. I play a controller.
I'm playing controller on PS5.
Yeah, I'm playing controller on PC, and I kind of wish I got on PS5 now, actually, just because my PC kind of struggles with it a little bit. Might be a my PC issue, might not be. I think people reporting performance is generally fine.
So far on PS5, I mean, runs like a dream, which is exactly what you would expect, of course.
Yeah, I only have like mild issues, which is more to do with my PC screaming at me than actual performance issues playing the game.
Your PC is haunted.
Yeah, definitely haunted, but it's like, it's hard to explain controls outside of, hey, they're really good, they feel really good. That's all I can say is outside of UI responsiveness to controller button presses, that feels a little bit sluggish at times for some reason. I don't quite get it. But playing on controller just because of the like 3D movement makes more sense to me on like a stick than clicking, especially for long periods of play, which I was definitely doing. I played that game in like 2 sittings, both like 12 hours each or something. But I think it's very, very good. But the way the build diversity and how you feel like it actually works out for you, all of the stuff is really responsive. And for me, the reason I run the Flurry build is because Flurry has this thing where, well, the reason I run Puncture and Flurry specifically, Puncture has a trait where if you hit with, it splits into 3 blades. If you hit with 2 of them, so if you're close enough range, it makes enemies vulnerable. Then Flurry will hit, if Flurry, which is this AoE attack, if it hits any vulnerable enemy, it spreads that vulnerability to everything. And then also for every vulnerable enemy you hit with it, it heals you for percentage of your max life. So I'm this glass cannon of, I will heal myself to like, not full because there's a cap on it, but I'll heal myself like crazy with every Flurry cast. So I'm running around like crazy, throwing daggers at range, shadow stepping in and healing up like crazy. And that works for me to just completely dash through and cleave enemies to pieces. And then when a boss comes or an elite comes, I'll have to like use shadow step to dodge attacks, or if I get hit by CC, I'll shadow step out. I'll be dodging, I'll be dashing, I'll be actually playing a little bit of a dashy, evadey kind of heavy thing, versus people who might play barbarian and tank everything, or people who play sorcerer or the range rogue and kind of have to kite. I think those will feel worse to me and a lot of people, but generally I haven't heard a bad word about how it feels to play. The build diversity and the fact that it's not super complicated, you can build a reasonable core and then add to it with your items, as opposed to like Diablo 3. Now this might change when you get to the like World Tier 4 and beyond, but I know one of the problems people have with some of these games, and a big issue I had, was you don't get to play the game until endgame, because you have to get a full set before your ability activates in the right way. This is designed so if you're just playing the campaign, you're just kind of plodding through. Once you have a finished build, you'll have a finished build or close to it around level 20 or 30 or something, which you come to pretty quick, and then you can have the full experience of the full game. And I think that's crazy to me. There's a lot of stuff with Paragon boards that I could talk about, but I haven't experienced enough to say anything reasonable, and I'm not a really big endgame player. But I can say about endgame is that the way they've simplified ARPGs in a way, without removing any of the depth, seemingly, it's like a framing simplicity. It's like a, hey, what do you do at max level? And in Diablo 3, there's like a 20 billion step guide of all the shit you had to unlock, all shit you had to do. Whereas in this, they've made a very good point of, hey, you just finished the campaign. Go here and talk to this dude, and he'll explain what you do now. And that is, you know, it's different varieties of reusing content that already exists in the world. Like, go do this dungeon again, go do this world quest again, or world quest using WoW terms. But, you know, do this stuff in the world again, and you'll get better loot for it this time. And that feels a little bit bad, or it should. But because of the way things peter around the map, and because you're using this as an excuse to clear side content you didn't in the campaign, they've basically overlaid this, like, hey, here's all the side content of the game. You could finish it before finishing the campaign if you wanted. But if you don't, you hit endgame, and then it goes, hey, we've given the world a little of a lick of new system paint, not actual paint. But like, hey, now the dungeon you haven't done that you were going to get around to unlock that legendary power, hey, it'll now give you Grim Favors, which you can turn in for a box of weapon stuff. And you go, okay, sure. Do that until you get to 50, and then you finish the capstone dungeon, which is 2 dungeons stuck together with a big boss at the end, which is kind of a bit, it's not stellar, but it's perfectly fine.
The dungeons are fine.
Yeah,
sometimes they have an annoying layout, but
yeah, but then the nightmare dungeons, which you unlock in World Tier 3.
Yes, this is our real like end game repeatable sort of mid plus dungeons from WoW, but transplanted into Diablo-ish.
Yeah, this is basically what they've done is they've added Nephilim rifts to Diablo 3, and then they went, people like these, let's put in World of Warcraft. And then everyone went, we don't like these in World of Warcraft, let's well, people do, some people don't, let's iterate on them for years and years and years. And then they did that, and then PoE did all its iterating for years and years, and then Diablo basically came out with, hey, here's a version that works pretty good. So they have negative affixes, but the couple that I dealt with were actually kind of fun to engage around. They made it harder, but they were literally fun to deal with. In a way that you look at World of Warcraft and you think, see everyone raging about the affixes, because in Diablo, you're especially because I played all this solo. I didn't have party for any of this because I play those games solo. I prefer it that way. It was just full on Eye of the Agency. My build has a solution for that. There's these things called blood blisters that was in one of the affixes, and it was, okay, you kill mobs and every X mobs like random, one of them will spawn a blood blister on death. If you don't kill a blood blister, it doesn't have much health, just a little bit. If you don't, it'll like spawn away from you. You'll see this like big blob of blood burst out of it and go over it and then grow. If you don't kill that in time, it explodes doing, it was like 80% of my health. So I was like, I pretty much have to go sort this out, especially if I'm in combat. And because I have Shadow Step and Dash, and 2 charges Dash and 2 charges Shadow Step, I could just immediately sort it, and that felt good to me. I'm like, okay, I've got a solution for that. I just have to pay attention. I just have to keep my eye on everything that's moving. There's another one, which was a lightning storm, and this was a little like thing comes around me and makes a sound whenever lightning's about to strike. So it makes a sound, and then it opens a dome, and it'll protect me if I go into it. This happens during fights, during boss fights, everything. And you go, oh, well, that sounds like it's awful for, you know, oh, you're going to run into a problem. If the boss is hitting you and you're in this dome, you're going to die. The dome's big enough that you generally have enough like room. So they've thought about it, and they've actually designed these in a way that they're going to roughly feel good. Sometimes they'll be a little bit too hard to deal with, but largely speaking, for me, they were like, yeah, this is more than fine. You have a way to deal with this. And I was like, oh, this is fun. But in the way that I was having it too easy in the campaign, because I was just blasting stuff, and I was a little bit bored, but it was okay enough. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. I'm doing this for the novelty of the campaign. Once I hit this nightmare dungeon, I was like, this is fun. This is hard enough that this is fun. I'm really engaged. Some combination of like having the dodge roll and having the mobility as a rogue, but also not being very tanky, so having to constantly be in fights to keep my health up with my lifesteal, or knowing when to get out and just like range throw punctures while I wait for some energy to come back. It all just worked in this way where I was playing this game for like, I think I was at 2 or 3 of the nightmare dungeons just straight back to back, and I was like, I have to go to bed now. I have to stop this and go to bed, or I will be here all night, because I finished the nightmare dungeon, and the way you activate them is sigils drop, and you just use it from inventory. So you pick, oh, well, I want to do that dungeon, and like I've got an item that says X dungeon, Y affixes, I'll do that. But you get so many of these, you can pick and just drop the ones you don't want. So you're never forced into, oh, this is the one I have, I guess I have to do it. You get to pick, and they have a decent chance of giving you like new sacred unique items and loads of resources. And that's where like my earlier comparisons to just crack come in, because it is really addicting. The pacing of it, the flow of it, the loop of go back and sort all your like loot. I don't like that. I don't like sorting loot. I don't like having to look at my loot and see, oh, well, is 5% crit damage better than 4% vulnerable damage? How much vulnerable uptime I have? Well, it's close to 100, so I don't know what's better. I don't like that. But for me, because it's like I just wait until I get a big upgrade that I can tell immediately. I just go, get rid of all my gear, sell it or junk it, and then just that gives me enough for a breather that I'm ready to go back into another dungeon. And that like kind of fast, slow loop worked for me in a way it hasn't in one of these RPGs before in a long time. And I'm kind of still worried about how much I play. They've got all of the, and this is the hard part to describe, because you look at any of the games and go, the thing they've got right is every detail, or most of them anyway. And that's where I find it annoying, because it kind of, you imagine like the IQ bell curve meme, and on the one side is just someone going, game's simple, innit? Game's good, that's it. On the other side, it's game's good, that's it. But then in the middle, you have like lots of people trying to like, well, what about it? It does make it good. What is the secret sauce here? And that's all important to know. But to me, I'm just like, they polished this and iterated on it until it was good in every way. They've had reasonable ideas. They haven't, they haven't reinvented any wheels. They've just went, we're going to spend 1 million years making a game that's really good. And what happens if it's not good? We'll just fix that bit before we release it. That's what it feels like. It's just been polished and polished and polished up to the point where you go, this is a Blizzard quality release. But in the past, when a Blizzard quality release meant they had polish and they put time and they put effort in, it is a game that, because Blizzard, there's maybe some of it where people bounce off and go, what is this? Because it's an ARPG. But it's very much, this is what we would expect from a good timeline Blizzard instead of a bad timeline Blizzard in a bunch of ways. And that's really wild to me to say, because I go out of my way to not give Blizzard any additional points. You know the way like Nintendo get the +1 on their reviews? Like they're +10 out of 100. Sometimes they're +15, or sometimes they're +20 actually, depending on the game. And Blizzard would have that as well. This doesn't reinvent the wheel. This isn't like the second coming of video games. Tears of the Kingdom is the second coming of video games. Ignore what I just said about Nintendo's +1. But this is something that really stands to the current like release of 2023's games being crazy good and hard to pick. Like I'm sat here going, do I play Diablo 4 or do I play Street Fighter 6? I'm like, both of these games are really good. I don't know what to do.
For you, that's like that says quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I've had a really good time. I just don't know if I could see myself there in the long haul, purely because the whole start a new seasonal character, do the map again, to me is just a instant zero. I'm uninterested, unless they truly do surprise me with what their seasonal offering is. For the other things then, the monetization and what's next. The only major problem on launch was PS5 license issues, which I believe they had fixed in like a day and a half. I was playing PS5, didn't impact me. I'm not exactly sure how widespread it was. As for monetization though, well, they basically gave people B-roll during the reviews. Now, of course, in this live, we can actually see the monetization, and it's expensive. It's not stuff that is turbo garish. Right? Like, I think it generally speaking isn't one of those things where it's like, the store is obviously a million times better than in-game. It's entirely ignorable. Who knows how that is going to feel when the Battle Pass comes out with the first season. Like, we know that there is not power on it, but I just mean feel. You know, how will Blizzard actually get that to feel for players? Yeah, I mean, with Platinum, it's just one of those currencies for a game like this. You buy it at over a certain amount, you get a bonus free. It's not really free. Everything feels like it has a markup though that's kind of silly.
Yeah,
like, stuff is stupid expensive.
Yeah, this is the hard part for me to discuss because I don't give a shit about cash shops games. I don't like them being there. I understand why they're there, and I don't really have any issue with people who do want to buy cosmetics, especially when it's like, hey, I want to support this game.
$30 for a set, $15 for a horse, and some of those horses, like, they don't look incredible.
Yeah, I'm more than happy running around on the horse that I had from the demo. Like, was it like hitting 20 in early access or something?
Yeah.
And I have a horse and a thing. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. But then I don't care about cosmetics in video games unless they're earnable, in which I do care. But if they're on the store, I'm like, no, that has no value to me whatsoever. Yeah. So it's hard for me to actually talk about it because it doesn't impact me in the slightest. It's there in the menu in the same way, like, you know, if you open the map and you want to go to your options to leave the game, select character, you have to go through it if you're on controller, or it'll sit there a little exclamation mark until you've browsed all the new things on it. So it is just a baked in part of it, and I'm like, it should be a lot cheaper because it is ridiculous how expensive. Like, that's for sure. It should absolutely be, hey, here's a couple quid for a thing. Even then, you could argue maybe it shouldn't because you bought the whole game. And now a lot of this is the continued development.
Well, yeah, so, we'll just have to see like how much is in those seasons.
Yeah, that's the problem, where it's like, if this continues to add content, and if it continues to add content, like, here's more dungeons, here's more stuff, like, seasons not having narrative content is probably going to make it interesting, but I think it works because
non-main narrative content.
Yeah, because that's, I guess it depends on what it actually turns out to be, because there's a lot of stuff it could be, but I don't know how much of it will have any value unless they go for bigger side stories, or if this is going to be a dedicated players. And this is what I say about it being 2 games. The whole, like, expansion model, where they're like, hey, we're going to make, you know, they confirmed we're going to make 2 expansions. At least you're like, okay, well, I would happily come back to this game for a long time with expansions. I think my player model is, I'm probably not going to play past season 1 because I bought early access, so I have the battle pass for season 1, so I'm going to see what that's like. But I also have other video games to play that I prioritize much higher, such as anything that gives me novelty, whereas the season pass isn't going to do that for me. But I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this for at least another, like, maybe 20, 30 hours, come back for the season, and then maybe back for the expansions. And if they can do that, then that's okay with me.
Yeah.
But it feels like they're just going to be like, hey, please give us loads of money because we spent a lot of time developing this game. Please give us loads and loads and loads of money to support all of these development funds. I'm like, is it maybe a little bit of this video game is too big and we're hitting unsustainable development levels where they have to try and nickel and dime people like crazy in order to make it worth their time?
Well, on that for the future then. Yeah. What's happening next? Yeah. So season 1, of course, will start in July, so we'll get to see what all of that stuff is actually like. We've heard all of the all the stuff about, like, Blizzard Team Health, Blizzard Albany, not an amazing culture fit. That's the people who were Vicarious Visions. Morale's, I think, like, kind of low there because they've been absorbed into the Blizzard blob, right? Now, they have been talking about implementing incentives to keep staff, going, right? Post-launch, there's all of that, which is kind of interesting that they've talked about that. But the other thing, then, is that Rod Ferguson has actually detailed their development process, saying that right now, there are 2 expansions, right? So they're finishing up Season 1, they're working in Season 2, they're working on Expansion 1, and now they're kicking off work on Expansion 2. Big team.
Good, yeah, good. So
big team.
Which means expensive team, which means buy those cosmetics, please, which is the awkward thing of, that's where ultimately my thought currently is, because I think I hate saying this, but we're long past like the gamers angry at cosmetics because it's just a part of life. You're like, well, I'll use my energy to get angry at something else that might actually make a sort of a difference, maybe. And I think that's where I'm coming to, where there's a little bit of a sustainability issue with how this is ultimately being made. But if they're keeping all their devs on and they're actually going to make content forever and it works, and this is the part that's frustrating, where this is a live service game. It doesn't feel like it right now because it launched, and it launched really good. And it's just going to be, I think we all want the answer now. Is Diablo 4 good? Is Blizzard back? And the answer is yes, and that's a complicated question. A very complicated one. Let's wait a while. It's a very good video game as it stands, but the live service part of it's going to be where they go, well, how do you actually keep interest? Is it going to be, hey, we got 20 bajillion sales because this is a big marketing campaign and everyone's really happy with it and the campaign's good and it's reviewed well? How many of those do they expect to keep is my question. Because if they expect this to be like, here's all of your players are staying because they want to play this forever, and that's their intention, and that's how they've built these expansions in this seasons, I think they're going to have some issues. But if they're happy to go, hey, well, this is definitely going to be big interest, smaller like line of people staying, big interest expansion because the narrative beats the novelty, that this is new stuff.
A big marketing push for whatever's different and new.
Yeah, it's like, if they're happy to do that, that's fine. But again, this is just looking at Blizzard's internal development process and going, have you done an Overwatch 2 in any capacity internally? Have you got wrong expectations? Do you expect this game to make infinite billions and then to throw all your staff in the bin whenever it doesn't? Is there something like that going on? I think only time can tell, honestly. And also, like, is Blizzard back? Is this the flag planted of Blizzard are good again? Obviously, it depends on like the live certification goes, but I think it also depends on how the next Blizzard announcement goes. Because Diablo is a free win because it's Diablo, and they had that in stone and they carried it forward. They haven't got anything else to carry forward except for new World of Warcraft content, which we know they're carrying in. They've brought it forward in a different way that's not going to be as exciting. So maybe they can reclaim that back. But it's like, if they can capture the heart of gamers again, it'll be in any of their unannounced stuff, or maybe the survival project. Because this is all of the marks of, if they went ahead with their third-person version or their over-the-shoulder version, they would have been crucified because people want Diablo. But also, they might have been able to keep to their ambition of making a fully fledged, very good, strong narrative in the likes of what AAA game devs are up to these days, and the very big hitters are going for. I think they have a bit of an, how do I describe this? An identity crisis. Because Blizzard are good at making games for old PC gamers, and for Overwatch e-girls and e-boys. That's what they make those for. But they don't make games that are really for the super massive broad audience. And I don't know if they'll ever make the switch and go, what's our The Last of Us?
I think I know.
What's our
Diablo
God of War?
Can be pretty big.
It can be,
like,
but
there's
can
a
it
lot
be
of those
that?
gamers. Like, remember the sales figures Diablo 3 got? They were massive.
Yeah.
So I see them as just keeping this going as a maybe one expansion every year, one expansion every 2 years.
I imagine they'll want just for the 2 years is like too long for, I think, for expansions for something like this, especially if you're going for this kind of idea. And if they got 2, then they're not going to be working 4 years ahead of time. They're not going to be finished an expansion, or sorry, working on it. But like, oh yeah, this will be done in 2 years. I imagine this full on, right? We'll get this fast.
Change so much by then anyway.
Yeah, fast.
I mean, overall, then they are in a really strong position. It is firmly theirs to lose. I think that's essentially the takeaway here.
And that's the thing. Blizzard really love being in a position of power and then completely fumbling the ball at the last second. That's what they did with Overwatch so bad. That's what they arguably did with World of Warcraft.
They seem better planned here, though.
Yeah, this one seems to be like a more long-term plan that's going to actually work out.
Yeah, and it seems like Vicarious Visions now, Blizzard Albany, maybe added on a little bit earlier. Like, that was maybe one of the more immediate things that happened. Obviously, they were involved with Diablo 2 Resurrected, but that just does sort of beg the question. When did they really start in this? Because the game is massive with a lot of content, and they quite clearly have... Expansion 1 in production, Expansion 2 in pre-production, and I suppose then perhaps a live team to handle the seasonal content.
Probably, yeah.
At any rate, though, large development team. So it'll be interesting to see. It's that thing. I know a lot of people just will be like, oh, it's just Diablo 3 10 years later. That's definitely not true. This looks and feels better in every way. It does feel like a generational upgrade. The big static open world, I vastly prefer to how the world of Diablo 3 played.
Oh, it's way better.
This is just a really big win on almost every front as a game.
It's like, I keep looking for ways to add asterisks to that, and I've kind of run out, because I do want to be a little bit cynical about Blizzard's future, because I see things that are happening internally. I'm like, I feel like I don't want to fall for the Blizzard are back again, because I think that's happened a few times over the years, and I try desperately not to fall into that. But at the same time, I play this game and I'm like, This is just good. Well done to everyone involved. This is very good in every way. It's not perfect in every way. It's not astounding in every way, but it's really very good in most of them.
Yep,
And
it's
you're like,
good. It's a good effort. I don't think anyone could really feel particularly bad about picking this up whenever they choose to.
that said, if you're buying it for early access, like I did, because this is the only weekend I had free for or will have free for a long time, 80 quid's a lot for a video game. It's a lot for a video game.
They will tell you that, well, the season pass is part of the value. That's what they'll say.
Yeah, it's not
And you
out yet
can-
though.
But the thing is, you can quite clearly see how they sort of did that pricing ladder to always try to egg you up and up and up. Which is, I mean, every company does that. It is just interesting to see. But overall, I mean, unless you've got any other thoughts, I think that's kind of it for our initial impressions. Overall, like they are strong.
As a $60 game, I think this stands up with those reviews that are calling it 89. This is like releasing it in June. They definitely have their own audience. They don't have to worry too much about like Street Fighter 6 releasing same like early access same day Street Fighter 6 or Tears of Kingdom out a couple weeks ago or Jedi out a while ago or Final Fantasy 16 at the end of this month. They don't really have to worry about any of those because they have their own audience. But even then, I think the game holds its place as if you. I always like to look at things and kind of, what is this going to look like in 10 years' time when we think back on it? What's it going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And I think this is going to be one of those, when people post a collage of why 2023 was the best year for video games ever, Diablo 4 will be in it. That's exactly it. If this is a 4-game collage, a 6-game collage, 8-game collage, Diablo 4 will be in it, which is wild for a game that is or for a year that's so ridiculously strong as it is.
Yeah.
It's good work.
So there we go. Let us know what you think. That's our experience so far. I'll continue to chip away at things, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Of course, we'll be there to check in on things when the season starts to see if any funny business is pulled. All right, let us know what you think, and yeah, we'll see you next time.